This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire City Plan Commission meeting. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM. This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the Planning Commission meeting, and appreciate all of you taking the time to be here with us. And again, before we get started, if you would please turn your cell phones off or to silent. And then if you wish to participate in tonight's meeting, if you would please fill out one of the yellow sheets on the back table, bring it up to Ned here at the front table, and then when you come to the podium, please introduce yourself with your name and your address. And with that, we'll get started with public hearing for a recommendation for a rezoning, 202 West Grand Avenue.
We've received a request from applicant to have this item withdrawn.
Okay.
It is a noticed hearing, so that's why it remained on your agenda, in case some folks showed up.
Okay, thank you. Do we need to take any action or postpone or?
Planning Commission normally doesn't. They just kind of all nod their head, and it's
okay.
Council usually actually votes and accepts the withdrawal or postpones indefinitely.
We will do a good job of nodding.
Okay.
Let's see, item number 2, for recommendation again, 4 parcels, annexation for 4 parcels from the town of Union.
This property is on the north side of Colip Road off 33rd Street. It's 1.3 acres of land. There is a single-family home on it with a garage, and then 3 vacant lots to the north. It's understanding they're going to be consolidating those lots for another house. The property is within the sewer service area of the city. Sanitary sewer and water is available in Colip Road. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we've recommended approval.
Any questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Thank you. Is the applicant here? I'm going to ask if the applicant is here. All right, seeing that, is there anyone here? This is a public hearing? Well, no, but is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Please feel free to come up. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the annexation of 4 parcels from the town of Union.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Agenda item number 3, for approval, a preliminary plat for Trillium Estates.
This property is in the town of Washington, east of Highway 93, north of Double I. It's this 80. This is the preliminary plat. It provides access to Double I with Talmadge connecting through White Oak, and then stubbing out Sandstone to provide connection to its existence up here. The property is mostly zoned rural homes. There is commercial zoning with lots 16 and 15 already in existence. Most of this is outside the sewer service boundary. This is the actual sewer service boundary. Here is outside. This is inside. Under the terms of the agreement we have with the town and our subdivision code, the property is allowed a lot size or density standard of 1 lot per 2 acres. This is 79.12 acres. It's allowed 39 lots. This plat shows 38 lots and then the outlot. And we also note the other provisions of city code in our report. As per those provisions, the county will review the feasibility of septic systems and wells for this property when it reviews the plat. This outlot does protect a wetland area that's about right in the middle of it, and the town will review the plat and determine consistency with its comprehensive plan, also with its review of the plat. We've recommended approval.
Any questions for Darrell? Mr. Granlund?
Do the road names have to be spelled the same?
They should, aren't they not?
Talmadge?
Hopefully the county catches that.
Any other questions? So you said it has been before the township and the county?
I don't know where it is in terms of process with the other jurisdictions. The applicant I know is here, maybe he can
Okay.
let you know on those things.
And then if the lot size, is there ghost plating in this too, or?
No, that ghost plating provisions are no longer applicable for these types of situations.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Created enough issue with that
Right,
plat right there.
Right,
so.
right. Yeah. Any other questions for Darrell? Great, thank you.
Yep.
Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Good evening. Cody Phillipsack, C&M Homes. Yeah, this is our development. I don't really have a lot to say. We're going to be pushing it pretty quick. We have the town's approval going for county. They already approved all the rezones and everything. I don't know, there's a whole lot more to say. There'll be some commercial on this portion here, big county park in the middle here with potentially basketball hoops, different things like that, walking trails we're gonna do. So yeah, I would say the price point of the homes will be in the 400 average price probably. Any questions for me?
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Peterson?
There once was a restriction on the access distance from 93 to this property. That's been changed. Do you know how that got changed?
I don't know the whole story behind it. The DOT had that access point all along. They had actually, they purchased the right-of-way area through here from the owners of the property, and they actually put this stub in at that location.
Because there was an access restriction that's since been removed by another deed, because that access location is very unsafe. You need 8-second sight distance with a highway with 55 miles an hour in there, and I timed some this afternoon, and there was 3 cars at 5 seconds westbound and 1 at 6. But if you go to the east property line of this layout, then you get 8 to 10 seconds of sight distance. So I think that's beyond us here, but I will pass on my thoughts to the county since it's already passed the town, because that is an unsafe location for that access.
They deemed it safe, so the DOT did. I don't know what else to say. That's beyond my area of expertise, so.
Any other questions? I guess that's it. Thanks for coming up.
Thank
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Trillium Estates.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion is passed. Agenda item number 4. Again, for approval, certified survey map for Sandstone Road.
This is the property again in the town of Washington to the east of Highway 93, this time off Sandstone Road. The Trillium plat was this 80. There's the wetland area. And the county park would be down here. Double I would be just off the bottom of the map. And you know we actually mark the lot sizes of the abutting properties. This is the county zoning map, the red being commercial, the white being rural homes. And this is the proposed certified survey map, splitting the property into 3 lots, acre and a half, 3.66 acres, and this is a steep slope restriction that is non-buildable. Here the property is within the sewer service area. Under the terms of the agreement with the town and standards of city subdivision code, the property is restricted to 10-acre lots. There is an exception to that standard that is allowed by the Plan Commission to establish based on the criteria in the report. In review of the criteria, we would note the following. Again, this is a 6.67 acres in size. It's zoned rural homes. The exception noted in city code is allowed for rural homes. The CSM actually notes it as C3 zoning. The zoning designation needs to be changed to rural home on the face of the CSM, or this exception does not apply. Based on the vicinity map, it does note then the lot sizes of the surrounding property, and then if this plat is approved immediately to the east, in our opinion, it is reasonable to assume that this property will have mostly similar lots or smaller lots to that is surrounding it. City utilities are actually about a half mile to the north. It would be cost prohibitive to extend those utilities for this 3-lot development. This development would lessen pressure on development of larger tracts of land. It is being done by CSM. And again, if the plat to the east is approved, we do believe the lots proposed with this CSM will be reasonably consistent in size with the surrounding lot splits. We have recommended approval, subject to that notation on the face of the CSM being changed to rural homes. Are there any questions?
Questions for Daryl? Commissioner Mitchell.
So Daryl, the CSM is wrong. There's a mistake on the CSM?
This, again, the applicant, I believe here, is likely a typo. Our zoning maps for the county shows it as rural homes. If this is commercial for commercial development, which I don't think is the case, then this exception does not apply. They just need to correct that and show it as rural homes.
Commissioner
But
Mitchell.
they can't, if it can't change the zoning, they can only correct if there's a...
It can correct it if it
clerical
is actually wrong, and it appears it is actually wrong. Okay?
Any other questions for Daryl? Seeing none, thank you. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
I'm the applicant. My name is Dan Green. And in regard to the C3 rural homes, C3 was on the up along the Highway 93 right here. And everything behind that was rural homes. So I think that's where the mistake came. The C3 was the front. So as long as I've owned it, there was a split there. When the DOT did the 4-lane Highway 93 project 10 or 12 years ago probably, then they put in these 2 roads as frontage roads for access to adjoining properties. So, and essentially where they put the road, the front was the C3, the rear, which was the Oakwoods portion of it, was rural homes. So I believe that's where the mistake came, was C3 was up front.
Commissioner Radabau.
Is the intention then to use RH zoning on here?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it's always been.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Peterson.
In that, it was originally C3 for that area till the backage road or the internal street system get put in. Is there something that needs to be done administratively with the town or the county to get that as RH back there? If it was originally C3?
The map had it as rural homes,
Okay.
and
How you doing? On the county GIS, it shows it as C3, but it talks about the whole piece as a whole in the description. So I think that might be where some of the confusion is. And the county has not gotten back to me on any comments of my submittal until you guys approve it at this level. Then they'll come back and give comments, and I'm sure they'll make me change that.
It might be something you want to clean up administratively. then,
Yes.
with the
That'll
county.
get cleaned up, yeah.
Okay.
Again, that's a preliminary, that they like all the zoning information on the map, and then that comes off when we record the final anyways, but.
Any other questions for the applicant? I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the certified survey map for Sandstone Road.
So moved with the correction.
We have a motion with a correction
I'll second it.
and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congratulations. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, street vacation for Mount Nemo.
Okay, the city has received a request to vacate a short stub of Mount Nemo Avenue. To get your bearings, it's just south of Seymour Road and just east of Hastings Way. The adjacent property owner petitioned for the vacation, several reasons. Here's the aerial that would fit underneath that. This is the short stub of right-of-way here, comes back and serves just the one garage. There's a steep slope that comes down, and then the configuration of these houses here, it's unlikely that that road would ever be constructed through. Currently, there is a 14-foot wide bituminous mat with a very poor pavement condition of 22. There's no curb and gutter or sidewalk on either side of the right-of-way, and no public utilities within that right-of-way either. So vacating this right-of-way and releasing the utility easements would not impact any future transportation or utility needs for the city. This will be on the City Council's agenda next Monday, with action on Tuesday for the resolution to vacate the right-of-way, and there will be a companion resolution to release the utility easements for it as well. So the action before you tonight is to make a recommendation to the City Council.
Questions for Mr. Jensko? Commissioner Ebert.
Question for you on the aerial photo where there's that garage back there. If we vacate that street, how are they going to get access to that garage, or who owns it?
Well, actually, part of the conditions we said before we could come forward and recommend the vacation is that these two parcels need to be combined. So the
Okay.
owner of the garage is the owner of this
Okay.
parcel. He's already combined them. And my understanding is once the vacation is done, then he'll get half, his neighbor will get half, and this will become his driveway back to the garage.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? That's it. Thank you. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? I'm going to ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve for recommendation the street vacation for Mount Nemo Road.
I'll move.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Agenda item number 6 for approval, a site plan, Remax Office and Tavern at 4260 South.
This is the property location off of London Road and Southtown. And it's commercial with a drainage facility immediately to the north. We did receive a revised site plan from applicant addressing the issues spelled out in the report. And I don't get it right. Again, Southtown, London, the building layout, and then the parking lot. And the building elevations in your packet. This is a 5,313 square foot building, Suite A, which is the north portion. It's 2,182 square feet tavern. Suite B, which is the southern portion, 3,131 square foot office space. Its required parking is 33 stalls, and they now show probably 37 stalls on this revised site plan. I'd like to just go through the conditions in the report and explain to you how they've addressed them. Those conditions are on page 36 in your packet. If you want to turn to page 36. They had provided 6 copies of revised site plan showing the following changes. A is the bike rack, which they'll provide here. It's now indicated. B is the pedestrian links. They do provide 2, one from this sidewalk out to Southtown, and the other from this sidewalk over to London Road. 3 is the additional street tree, and that is now indicated here. 4 are ornamental street trees underneath the power line on London Road, which they now show. 5 is noting the area between the sidewalk and the parking lot is 5 to 10 foot in width. And it is noted with dimensions both here and here, but it is not properly drawn. We'd still ask that the applicant redraw the site plan based on the notations. We actually look at the notations. This is a 160-foot lot, and if you add up all the notations going across, it adds up to 160 feet. It's 153 here. Again, if you add up all the notations going across, so it all works out, the notations, but they need to modify the drawings to actually show what is there. They now do indicate the sidewalk on Southtown at 5 foot width. They have provided foundation plantings. They simply removed the sidewalk here, since this is a employee entrance, and the main entrance to the buildings are here and here, to provide a 3 foot wide landscaped area on this side of the building. They took the sidewalk here, which was 8 foot in width, and brought it down to 5 foot width, and then put again a 3 foot wide landscaped area in here for the foundation plantings. They do show a planting bed similar to this now over here. The planting bed here remains. This cannot be a planting bed. That is actually the ramp access for the handicap stalls on both sides. So that was our error in terms of the drafting of the staff report. They've actually removed the sign from the property, which was within the setback. They do show the multi-tenant sign plan for the property and sign. I don't know what that tenant will be, but that's the multi-tenant sign plan. They do provide additional exterior lighting. It's basically wall packs, properly meeting city standards, now indicated on the walls of the building. And they have properly now marked the trash recycling area with a 6 foot high screen. They still will need city engineer approval of grading and drainage. With these modifications, we feel comfortable in approving the site plan administratively once it is properly redrawn to match the notations on it, and John gets his grading and drainage review for the property. Are there any questions?
Questions for Darrell? So no, the only two signs they plan to put up are on the building and nothing, no pole signs or monument signs? Or?
That's all they've indicated on the plans.
Any other questions? I guess that's it. Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Hello.
Good evening.
Thanks. I'm with Dell Construction, just here to answer any questions. I apologize for the misdrawing. That'll be taken care of. I didn't know it was that until this afternoon, and we'll take care of that tomorrow.
Sure.
As far as the signage, both are kind of points of destination. They're not a drive-by thing, so you don't by chance see Remax and pull in and buy a house. So you, as far as the extra signage, we just did it that way.
Okay.
And I should note on a side measure, I'm in a partnership and that owns the building next door. We're very happy that this is going to happen next door. So I kind of come with two hats because this has been a lot that has received very little maintenance over time. And actually, within a year, I've talked with John about getting sidewalks over there because we have sidewalks that lead to nothing next door. So we're all for this. I should note the two businesses were kind of scouted out so that, and I do speak on with experience, there is very few of the properties that are in that Southtown area that have enough parking. These two are counter. The tavern doesn't even open until after the real estate business typically is done. So it's not an all-day thing, so that there's plenty of parking and they can utilize the same parking lot during their different hours of business. Because our building next door is always full. The building next to that one is always full. There's always parking on Southtown, so we tried to target two different uses at different times to not increase city park or street parking in that area.
Sure.
And as far as the drainage, we're working on that now too, and that'll be done within the next week. So if there's any questions about the
Any questions for the applicant? Looks like a nice addition. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing not, looking for a motion for approval for the site plan for 4260 Southtown Drive. Commissioner Peterson.
I'll make a motion for the approval with the drainage calcs.
With any remaining recommendations? Yeah, okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congrats. Thank you. Agenda item number 7 for approval, site plan for mini storage units at 2624 South Hastings Way.
This property is located on the south end of Old Highway 53. And that's an aerial photo then showing this lot. That's the site plan, the building, and the roadway, and it is for a mini warehouse unit. Council approved a general development plan allowing the reduced setback of 30 foot along the south property line, which they show in the site plan. They also have their 30-foot setback off of Old Hastings Way in the 50-foot setback off of New Highway 53. We place in the report a section of city code which states paved areas shall only be as large as necessary to serve parking, circulation, and open space needs. The appearance of paved areas shall be enhanced by landscaping. We note the entire site is shown as pavement other than grass down on the south portion, which is noted for stormwater runoff. We do not believe it is necessary to pave all of this area for a mini storage building. Paving should be what's necessary to provide driveways around the building only. The property has street frontage on 3 sides, highways on all 3 sides. Street trees, as per landscape manual standards, need to be shown within these landscape areas, and they can be provided on this site if this pavement area were reduced. If the Plan Commission wants to actually see what that might look like, this item would need to be postponed. If the Plan Commission desires to approve, we've recommended conditions, provide 6 copies of a revised site plan showing areas needed for driveways around the building as grass, street trees on 3 sides of the lot as per landscape manual standards. These trees should be noted as ornamental since they are underneath a power line, indicate the security lighting for this building, and again, we need drainage calculations. Are there any questions?
Questions for Darrell? Commissioner Ebert.
How wide, the paved asphalt there with the 30 feet, how wide should that be for a driveway?
They indicate on the north side of the building a 16-foot wide.
Okay.
In our minds, a 20 or maybe 24 feet at most would be proper around the building in order to make proper turn movements. Beyond that, we don't believe any more is necessary.
Okay. And because you can go around in a circle, you don't need space to back in and out?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Peterson.
Depends what you're going to store in there. I went down to Packer Storage today, down off of 93, and they have 30 feet between their buildings, which is entirely paved. And you actually need that amount if you're going to store a car in the storage. Yeah.
You can back a car off a 24-foot wide aisle in a parking lot.
But they're 16 feet on the north, so I think that's going to be just carry-in storage if they're going to do storage in the back. It's nice to have more, but I can think the 2 ends, they can get down to 20 or 22 feet for driveways.
Yeah.
Maybe not on the south side, though.
I think they can do 24,
Okay.
and it would work.
All right.
Can you just roughly show us where ideally you'd like to see grass?
I would measure out, again, 20 to 24 feet, and I would say the area here, and I would measure again 20 to 24 feet, and I would say the area down here. I would mark these as ornamentals, and then I'd place your street trees all the way around at your 30-foot spacing around the site like that. That's about what I would expect.
And we just approved a building across the street.
Yes, I actually brought that.
I see it's done, but I'm curious what we did for trees and such.
That has street trees on all 3 sides of the building, and again, only that area needed for parking or driveways was paved, so there's a lot of green space on that site. And I had a copy with it, but I can't find it right now. But that's a good example of what's across the road.
Sure.
I mean, granted, the building to the north was built many, many years ago and has a substantial amount of pavement, but other buildings as you get further to the north are newer and they have the street trees in, so.
Any other questions for Darrell? Thank you. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Good to see y'all again.
You too. Any thoughts, anything you care to add? Any comments about the pavement versus grass?
Yeah, I mean, normally I would, in most instances, I would agree with the recommendation. However, in this particular case, I think there's a case to be built for increased pavement. Reasons being, I mean, I drive a trailer a lot. I think maneuvering a trailer in there might be very difficult without having a wider area to make turns. You know, and I envision the 50 feet setback area being an area which people can turn and pull into there and make things a little bit easier. Darrell alluded to the site to the north is completely paved. I don't disagree with the ornamentals in the boulevard areas next to the cul-de-sac. I think that would be appropriate. I think being a high-density commercial use area, I also feel like putting trees there kind of defeats the purpose of visibility and so forth too, as well. And then also from my perspective, it also becomes somewhat of a maintenance nightmare too, with trying to maintain small strips of grass and so forth, especially with a fenced-in area like this happens to be, with the OT fencing around two sides of it as well. But I know the city has certain standards too.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Larson.
Thank you. I understand what you're talking about with trailers. If you're going to pull the vehicle perpendicular to the garage door and then back the trailer in, but typically, wouldn't you be able to just pull the trailer next to the building and then unload it into there? Or unhook it and push it in? I mean, is it imperative that the car be able to turn perpendicular to the building and back a trailer?
I mean, not necessarily, but that individual may certainly would want to turn around, which requires a bigger turning radius. You know, if I took my 18-foot enclosed trailer, I mean, I need about a 35 to 40-foot area to turn around in. Otherwise, I'm going to have to back up to the street, into the cul-de-sac, which sometimes poses an issue as well.
Can you go around the building?
You could turn around in the 50-foot area, which would be paved to the west and to the south area. It would leave sufficient area to do so. And the other thing I will add too, I don't know if you've ever been out to the site, but there is about half the lot is already existing pavement. It goes from one property line to the east all the way to the west, and there's only about maybe a third of it that's not paved currently to the south. So, I mean, I'm not really adding that much more pavement than what's already existing there.
And are they 10-foot units, 10-foot wide?
10-foot wide units. Well, some of them are 10-foot wide, some are 5.
The ones on the north and south, though? Or?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, ideally, the ideal situation here would be to have a 20-foot setback on the, or a 25-foot setback on the south, and that would allow me to have more room along the north. But given the restriction that was imposed as far as the setback goes with the southern property line, I mean, I'm kind of stuck leaving 16 feet of clearance on the north.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for the applicant? I guess that's it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jason.
Yep.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Then I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing that, looking for a motion to approve the site plan for mini storage units at 2624 South Hastings Way.
Terry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion for a postponement so that we can get the pavement and the landscaping piece resolved rather than approve this tonight.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on an amendment to the site, or postponement, I'm sorry, to a postponement. Any discussion? Commissioner Mitchell.
Well, I think we have a qualifications in our zoning code for a good reason, and even though there may be a lot of pavement out there, more pavement doesn't make the pavement that's there any better, and I think that we should see a revised site plan.
Mr. Peterson.
It might behoove the applicant too to put some turning templates on there and see what you can get by with the minimum pavement, which allows you, you're probably going to need some grassed areas for snow storage during the winter also. So it might work out for you too.
Yeah, and I guess I think we've kind of set a standard for the neighbor across the street, so I think it's hard for us now to come and change that standard. But, I mean, I understand the backing and facilitating the vehicles, but at the same time, it is a cornerstone where we have a lot of traffic and people coming into Eau Claire and in and around Eau Claire, and I think if it looks nice, all the better, that little intersection. So, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor in regards to the postponement signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is postponed. Agenda item number 8, discussion and direction, street trees.
The comp plan has 2 tasks for us to do this year, and they're noted in the report. One is to strengthen the ordinance and practice regarding the planting of trees along public streets and roads. And second is to adopt a citywide plan for street tree species and spacing. We also attached in our report the pages from the comprehensive plan to do a nice job of illustrating the importance of street trees, particularly as it pertains to neighborhood design. A street tree is a tree planted within the boulevard area of the right-of-way, which is typically between the street and the sidewalk. City code requires city forester approval of that tree. Our city forester is here with us this evening. City code requires site plan review of all development within the city other than single-family homes. The site plan review chapter requires new development to be landscaped as per the provisions of the City of Eau Claire Landscape Manual. And that manual states, provide street trees adjacent to public right-of-way as selected from the city forester's recommended tree list, which is Appendix 3 in the manual. Tree plantings within the boulevard area of the right-of-way require approval from the city forester. So that's what our present code has. Appendix 3 of that manual provides then a listing of reliable planting materials for the City of Eau Claire, which includes the city forester approved street trees. And that listing should be reviewed and updated at this time as part of this project. And in doing that, as it pertains to new development, we would have then addressed the second issue of the 2 noted in the comp plan above. Planning staff did meet with the city forester then to address the gaps in our present system for providing street trees with new development, and we found 3 issues. Number 1, there's no provisions requiring street trees to be planted with single-family home construction. Number 2, the street tree plantings with all other development was occurring either in the boulevard area or the front yard. Boulevard street trees are preferred unless there's simply no room to plant them in the boulevard, in which case then they can be in the front yard. And number 3, street trees planted within a boulevard area were not consistently being reviewed and approved by the city forester. So here's some of our recommended changes. The first and big one, amend city code to require new single-family home construction to provide street trees as all other development already does. And there's various ways in which one can do that. 3 that we would suggest, with the first one being the one we think would work easiest, is simply require street trees with building permits. And that would be very similar to what we do with sidewalks, in terms of you put in the sidewalk when you build the house. The same would be in terms of the street trees. The street trees get put in when you build the house. The second would be to require site plan review of all single-family homes with a landscape plan. We do that right now with duplexes. Those would be site plans that we would be administratively approving, and then we would simply make sure that the street trees are being provided. The third option is to require the development agreement for new plats for single-family development to provide street trees. These development agreements then would have the developer funding the street trees as part of the letter of credit. The problem with those letter of credits, they normally have a timeline and a certain number of years, and normally by then the street utilities and all that is completed, and lots within that project in my plat, which is now 10 years old, they're still not built upon, so we'd still be holding money for the street trees to be planted. So I'm not sure if that necessarily would work. We might have to almost set aside money in order to get the street tree planted. It was the consensus of staff that street trees should be planted after the single-family home is completed, and either with or after the sidewalk is installed with the home. That simply is a way of protecting the tree from damage during construction. If you have big vehicles driving all over the place, they will likely damage the tree or the roots. It was the consensus of staff that requiring a fee of about $150 per tree could be collected with the building permit, and then simply have the city forester plant the trees either in the spring or the fall, that's your normal planting season, after the single-family home is completed would be the simplest way of doing that. Limiting the fee requirement to not more than 3 trees was also recommended as a way of capping that. Most city lots would have 2 trees. You'd have to have a bigger lot in order to get the 3rd tree planted. If there's no city sidewalk, which some lots don't have city sidewalks, it would then be the city forester that would determine the best place to plant the tree if it's in the public right-of-way. If there's simply no room in the public right-of-way to plant that tree, then front yard tree plantings would be encouraged. They wouldn't be required, but they would be encouraged. And then a corner lot policy would need to be established, again, similar to sidewalks. If you have a corner lot, now you're going to be planting more street trees, so there'd probably be some obligation for the city to be funding some of that planting, as we simply do now with sidewalks. When we have corner lots, we're paying for part of the cost of the street construction and sidewalk. That would be our way of looking at the best way of addressing the street tree provisions for single-family development. The second then is an amendment to the landscape manual, where we want to see most of these trees planted within the boulevard area. And that would be a simple amendment where we amend provision 3 that state provides street trees, and instead of saying adjacent to, say within the boulevard area of the public right-of-way. And going on to the next page, at the end of that provision, which exists in the landscape manual, also add, if room is not available within the boulevard area as determined by the city forester, front yard street trees may be required. And then the third is then the practice of getting city forester to actually approve street trees is an administrative procedure for them to review all development plans requiring street trees within the boulevard area to assure that the city forester reviews, approves, inspects, or even may be planting some of those street trees. And again, it's our suggestion is for smaller projects, we just set aside the money as part of the project, and the city forester goes out every spring or fall and plants the trees for those projects. For larger projects, FedEx is a good example. I bet they had to put in 50 to 100 street trees for that project. There might be a contractor hired, and the city forester is coordinating with that contractor the planting of those types of trees. So those are our ideas. We're here tonight to see your reaction, get your input, answer any questions.
Questions for Darrell?
Or city forester. Or Mr. Fieber. If you want to hear more.
You know, my only two cents or comment, and I'm not sure, I'm guessing it's done. Obviously, we want to avoid too many of the same trees on the streets and boulevards, so that when events like this ash borer and Dutch elm and all that doesn't come in and I mean, I look at Westover now, and it's, just every tree along the whole boulevard is gone. And then I live on a cul-de-sac off of that, and, our street is pretty much kind of the same thing. But, I think it was nice. We had a list of trees that we could choose from to replace. But there was actually talk, that maybe people would all get the same tree, and that doesn't do any good either, because the same thing could happen in 20 years where something comes through and wipes out the whole street again. So I don't know if it's necessary to require a variety of trees. Does it need to actually state that, or would that be part of the city foresters?
The landscape manual has that language in there now to encourage a variety of tree. I know the city forester, they do that as new practice. I know a home I built 20-some years ago on 15th Street. They came in after the street was built, and they put solid maples on one side and solid ash on the other side, and my house was on the maple side, and I bet those ashes will all be gone someday. So, and I don't think they do that anymore, is my guess. So.
Commissioner Hebert.
The other provision that I think that we should address is that there are times that those trees that are then planted either die or are broken off by kids. Is there any kind of a provision in there for replanting trees that are damaged and have to be removed, especially when they're young?
There is in the site plan chapter.
Okay.
If we receive complaints from landscaping that's been removed or damaged, we'll actually go and have the property owner replace them. A good example of that was it wasn't Gordy's. It was the old grocer where Gordy's is out on Hamilton East, and they came in and they took out all those trees along the road there, and we sent them a letter saying you need to replant all those trees. And I don't know why they took them out, but they did, and they had to go and replant them all because they were required improvements as part of the site plan.
And what do we do when the trees that are damaged are on city property?
Again, if they're part of...
There was one by Mount Simon that the kids just snapped right off.
Right. If they're part of a required site plan, we can require them to be replanted. If they weren't part of a required site plan, I guess you'd have to ask the city forester if they have programs to go in and replant some of those or not, or if it's just the property owner's responsibility if they have an interest. I know on my newer house up on Monte Carlo Drive, I put in boulevard trees, and there's a $60 rebate program that I use. But I think I'm the only property owner in that whole plat that has put in street trees because they're not required up there as they were back 20 years ago when I built my house on 15th Street. So there was a change in city policy that occurred between the building of my two homes that new plats aren't getting street trees planted like they were 20 years ago. So,
Mr. Mitchell.
Well, my first reaction to the recommendations is that we wouldn't want to start doing site plan review of single-family homes, would we? Do you really want to do that?
Well, technically there is a site plan reviewed for a single-family home by our building inspectors to make sure it meets proper setbacks. So it is occurring. It would simply mean we'd codify it and we'd say you got to provide the landscaping, and the building inspectors would look at it, and either myself or a city forester would look at it and make sure the street trees are there, and then we'd get set aside some mechanism for the payment of those trees as part of that review, so that come the spring or fall after the house is done, city foresters can get out there and use that money to plant the trees. So that would work, and it's no big deal to do that type of review, and it's a simple code amendment to the zoning code, but somehow we'd have to get a fee figured into it. The other is simply tying it into, I assume, the construction code if we tie it to a building permit somehow. We haven't looked at the code requirement amendments to do this. We've just thought of these would be the two ways in which, well, the three ways that make most sense.
But you're not talking about bringing site plans to the plan commission?
No, we'd still just administratively take care of it if we took that approach.
Mr. Peterson.
If the property owner were required to plant the boulevard trees and they die 3 years later, they've done their job.
Correct.
For the site plan.
Yeah.
Is it then up to them, if they want to replace those trees?
if it was tied to a site plan, we could require them. Our preference, as you see in the drafting of this memo, is to get city forester to plant the trees. They have found that the planting of the tree is very important in terms of proper species, proper depth, proper location, and proper inspection after it's planted is all important, and they'd rather be involved in the actual planting of the species, or at least involved in, if a nursery goes out and is planting a big bunch of these trees, that they're involved in, inspection of how those trees get planted, and they're planted by a professional instead of you and I going out and digging a hole out in the boulevard area and dropping them in. So.
But if the city were to plant the tree and then it dies 3 years from then, is the city responsible for replacing it then?
You want to get Rod? He's coming. You got him now.
I'm sorry, Terry, you have a question?
If the city were to plant the boulevard trees and they die 15 years from planting, is the city responsible for the replacement, or is the property owner?
Ideally, if it's in city property, I would, if the trees, if there was failure due to, acts of God or what have you, we would certainly do what we could to replace those trees within the budget means out of our forestry operational budget. There's also the rebate program, which I assume would still be in place, where the homeowner could utilize the rebate program, which is currently $60 per tree, where they could subsidize the cost of a new planting for $60.
And if a city planted tree does damage to the sidewalk with the root system, is the city responsible for repairing the sidewalk?
That's actually being discussed now at the council level too, and that's why when Daryl referred to the forestry division being involved in planting depth is crucial and critical. If a tree perhaps is planted too deep, adventitious roots near the further up the stem develop, and that's what typically causes some of the sidewalk disruption and cracking. So planting depth is real critical. Our staff here are very adept at tree planting, and you get one shot at planting. That's why it's so critical. There's an old adage that it's all right to buy a $2 tree. Just dig a $200 hole and you'll be in good shape.
These questions seem very particular because it does apply to me. I lost a maple tree this year that the city planted, and it has damaged my sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
So I will be in touch with you.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I'd be happy to entertain them as well.
How many species do you provide for people to choose from for boulevard trees?
Diversity is the only long-term protection plan we have. In our hardiness zone here in Eau Claire, that list isn't quite as long as it is, for example, in La Crosse.
Okay.
If we were 90 miles south, we could add quite a few more trees to this list. But we're going to select select trees that are salt tolerant, drought tolerant with our sandy soils. We look for trees that are fairly fruitless or not heavy fruiters, and have root systems that tend not to disrupt city infrastructure.
Okay, so deep-rooted trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we it's a fairly substantial list in my opinion. We have obviously the ash is taken off the pallet, but there's several 6 varieties of cultivated varieties of the American elm that are now Dutch elm disease tolerant, hackberry, linden, flowering crabs, and within the crab genus there's multiple varieties.
Okay.
Swamp white oak, red oak, ginkgo, magnolia in certain places, yellowwood, yellow buckeye, horse chestnut.
Okay.
And
so there's a few different kinds.
And if we space them and there's less pollination, we don't get.
And can the property owner choose which one they want?
We try to work with the property owner to the extent possible.
Okay.
Knowing that what the site, we want to make sure we plant the right tree in the right place, and that's critical. And the one thing that we run into with street reconstruction and when we're replanting is as somebody said, a homeowner might want what everybody else is planting. That's actually the worst option. But it's an opportunity for our arborists to educate the property owner and consider things long range. And so we definitely get involved in the front end of that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Can I ask one more question? And this is kind of for both of you. If we do these provisions, will it apply to the new subdivisions that we've recently approved? Or will it only be
No.
for subdivisions
It'll only-
that are in the future?
It'll only be for future subdivisions.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just a word of praise. I just mentioned I went through that whole process, and they did send us a list of trees, and the city, we worked with them and what ones we could pick, and I mean, it was really done well. I mean, it's a big task for your department to have to take all those trees down and replace them and take out the old ones and plant the new ones, and it really did go smoothly and efficiently, and it got really well. And yeah, we had a great variety of trees to choose from, which was kind of fun too.
That's good to hear. I know you mentioned Westover, and part of that situation there were primarily linden trees underneath transmission lines or distribution lines, and there's an example of wrong tree, wrong place. As the trees grow up into the utility lines, the power company every 4th year is going to bring them down, and then the trees tend to grow horizontally, and then they're becoming traffic conflicts. So we're trimming from the bottom up, we're lifting the canopies, and the power company's bringing them down, and pretty soon there's not a whole lot left that's viable, and it changed the look of that street. But maintenance-wise, now we've got better, we've got the right selection in that area, and that, thinking long-term is what our ultimate goal is. And it's an educational process too, but our staff, actually the forestry staff, relish that component of their job to a high degree.
Great. Commissioner Mitchell.
And I would echo the same thing. Our street was done last fall, and the city forestry person actually gathered neighbors as a group in the street, and we talked about what we wanted so that we didn't all pick the same thing, and we had a choice of what was available in the fall, or we could wait till spring till there were more trees available. It was the best part of the process of the whole darn reconstruction. It was really the best part, and the trees are in now, and it looks really good. So.
Yeah, we're about midway through our spring planting window, and we should be wrapping up by the end of the month. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Well,
welcome on.
And one more. So, do you have a preference here of the recommended changes, or is it not up to you?
Daryl's staff and the forestry division met on a couple occasions to talk about the things that Daryl had outlined, and I think this is a very positive step in directives for the long, the forest canopy for the city of Eau Claire. I really do. I think it adds protection that we're going to continue to see this canopy grown and cared for, and again, diversity is the big key, because we're going to lose the ash. And when you consider, that our maple percentage is really out of whack too, if there would be a bug that would come along and threaten our maple trees, we'd be looking at a serious canopy loss for the community. So working with the planning department and considering diversity and putting a process in place to ensure these available vacant planting sites get replanted really, works to the goal of our city's mission of being a sustainable community too.
Great. Thank you very much. I do have one more question. Say when a street gets new curb and gutter and sewer water, would this be an opportunity where the city would go through and replant, or?
Oh, when they rebuild the streets?
Yeah.
Yes. Then forestry does come out, particularly if they're removing trees because of the utility work.
But if there wasn't trees before, it would be included?
Yes, they try to get plantings in. Sometimes when it's just simply resurfacing the existing, then they leave the boulevards alone at that time. But when they like Kathy's, they really wreck the street, then they come in and redo all the trees too. So.
Okay, any other comments? Always looks good.
Okay.
Thank you. What else do we have? Neighborhood Revitalization Task Force.
We had the final meeting of the task force last Thursday. 26 members were in attendance. We got some comments that we'll put together into a redraft of the report and bring to Plan Commission to likely your second meeting in June, maybe even July. We're also going to send out notice to the neighborhood associations just to make sure they have their comments in case any of them have not sent those in to us. But the idea would be eventually all the final changes come to the Plan Commission. You can finalize the document, and then we'll take it on to City Council for a presentation in terms of here's what the task force has recommended.
Comments in that regard? Thank you. Code compliance items.
Yeah, I've got one question. When an organization goes out of business or store goes out of business, are they required to remove the sign if they had a pole sign or if they had a monument sign? Is there anything we do that makes sure that happens?
Yeah, after a certain time frame, they are required to either to remove the cabinet. They don't necessarily have to take the pole or the base of the monument out because it's anticipated that a new business would come in and might want to put it up in the same location. But in terms of the cabinet or the actual sign, that has to eventually be removed, yes.
Okay, because noticed, I think it's Mill End Run out off of Hamilton, kind of catty corner from the Nissan dealership. That sign's still up.
Okay.
And then there's a frame shop, I think, on Highway 93 before Bryan Street on the right. I probably don't have the name.
A frame shop?
A framing shop, frame shop.
That might be in the town, but we'll go check it.
Okay.
Just so you know, we'll go check it.
Okay, thanks, Stu.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a sign question. That building that, I forgot the name of the business, but that building that moved across the street, a Bracket, was on one side where the CVS was, and they moved across to the Wagner's lot.
Yes.
They just put up a new sign with a multi-tenant sign below it, but it just doesn't seem to fit that whole, but I don't know if there was a sign plan when we moved it, or...
I believe there was, but again, we'll check that. And I know which building you're talking about, okay?
Yeah, there's a huge sign, and then they put another small sign under it for the tenants, but it's not that big of a building. Any other code enforcement? Any future agenda items? No, everyone had a chance to look at the minutes. Any additions or corrections from the last meeting? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire City Plan Commission. This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.